Whoops. Okay, pro tip, wrap your belt around the crank pulley before you put everything in, because then you can't get your hands in there. Belt's fully routed, and I just spent 5 minutes trying to figure out where this random nut came from that fell on the ground. And it's from the back of the bracket right here. Just sits in that little hole, and then the old tensioner pulley threads right onto there. So that's why it fell out. That took way too long to figure that out. Let's get the new one in. What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. I tried to be cool like all the other YouTubers out there and do a nice, quick, easy install as the intro to this video. And a nice, easy, quick install turned into an absolute nightmare. So this video is not starting off on a positive note, because now I'm pissed off. This should have been a quick, easy 15-minute swap. All I was swapping was the idler pulley and the drive belt tensioner and the belt. Easy enough. But this drive belt tensioner from Gates is the shittiest design I have ever seen. You guys saw in that clip before, the nut that sits on the back of the factory tensioner that the stainless steel bolt goes into tightens up. Then you can use that bolt down there to pull the tensioner so you can get the belt off. On this Gates tensioner, there is no nut on the back. It just threads into the aluminum housing of the tensioner. And when you go to turn that nut and pull on it to pull the tensioner and get the new belt on or get the old belt off, whatever you're doing with the tensioner, that bolt just spins in place and it completely pulled the threads out of the aluminum housing, because you have a stainless steel bolt going into aluminum housing. And if you're over torquing something in aluminum, that's just a recipe for disaster. So I don't know why they built it like this, but this is definitely getting returned tomorrow. And I'm just gonna buy the pulley alone and leave my factory tensioner, because I tested it and it's actually okay. This was $115, the pulley is only $30. So I'm definitely returning this and just getting the pulley. Other than the tensioner, this idler pulley is actually super good quality. The bearing feels good on it. She sits nice. It's got a little bit of a wobble to it, but I think the factory one had a wobble to it too. And let me show you guys something funny about these boxes. This is the box for the idler pulley. It says Gates, made in Canada. This is the box for the tensioner. So I'm not gonna say it, but you guys know where I'm going with this, I think. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. The other thing that I found, I ended up having to put the car up on a jack just to kind of get the belt seated on the crank pulley properly on the bottom and the AC compressor. And then I found oil all over the place on the back of the engine. The oil filter O-ring is leaking on this for some reason. I have 6,000 kilometers on this oil change, so it could have just leaked out over time. Then the other thing I found is the frickin' coolant thermostat housing, right where the upper rat hose goes to the engine block, is leaking. And I just had this car on jack stands like a week ago before this cold snap hit in Alberta. It is minus 35 outside right now, which cars do not like to drive in at all, and is causing everything to break on my cars. Both the Civic and the WRX are broken right now. So now that we're hopped under the car, you can see the thermostat housing there. I can't really 100% tell if it's leaking from the rad hose or the thermostat housing itself, but if that rad hose is coming off, we're draining the coolant anyways. So I'm gonna get that thermostat and the thermostat gasket before I even tear any of that apart. And then I'm gonna replace that shitty spring clamp on that rad hose and put an actual worm clamp on there. Then the other piece is the oil leak, which was all coming near the back of the oil pan area. And I honestly think it was just coming from the oil filter. right up there. Nope, no it's not. I'm wrong. I found it. It's actually coming from the oil pressure switch, which is right above the oil filter. But that's an easy fix. There is no possible way I'm gonna be able to show you guys this. There's a little black piece just to the right of that block heater connector. That is the oil pressure switch, and it's all wet. The entire connector is soaked with oil, so I think it's safe to assume that that oil pressure switch is not holding anymore, and it's just pissing oil everywhere. So for today, just because I have to drive the car to work tomorrow, I'm just gonna change the oil quick, even though there is that oil leak. If it leaks some of it out, I'll just top it up. And then I'm gonna top up the coolant, and then I'll pick up back on this video once I get the thermostat gasket or O-ring, and the oil pressure switch, and a new tensioner pulley. And we'll swap all three of those out at the same time, and then the Civic is back to being mint. Alright, oil is changed and everything is put back together so that I can drive the car for now. One thing I did change about this pulley, I left the Gates pulley on there, but I did take the factory little dust shield off and just tighten the bolt down right onto the bearing. And that's because the factory dust shield was actually pressing into the Gates bearing. And I didn't like that, so I read the Gates instructions and it actually does say not to run the dust shields if they interfere. So we took that off. And it kind of looks cool with the exposed bearing anyways. So now everything is done on this car as much as I can right now with the parts that I have. The coolant's topped up, oil's full. But another thing I noticed when I was underneath it is that the CV boot on the right side, not the outer one, the inner CV boot, is like partially starting to come off. The clamp is not even holding it anymore. And that's because the oil has been leaking onto that CV boot for the last 6,000 kilometers probably from that oil pressure switch. And when you get hot oil on rubber, it tends to make it swell. So that CV boot is kind of just floating on that axle right now. It's not actually sealed to the axle. So I'm probably gonna buy a CV boot rebuild kit for this thing. So yeah, we got three things on this car now before we can boost it. We got the right front axle, we got the thermostat and the thermostat gasket leaking, and we got to replace that oil pressure switch. And then she's ready to handle the sauce, I think. And we got to swap out that tensioner pulley. So 5 things. I don't know. There's a lot of things. Alright, it is a new day. We finally got our new tensioner pulley. This one's made in Canada, so we should be good to go there. And then I got a OEM oil pressure switch straight from Honda. So this should fix the oil leak, and that should fix the rest of the belt noise. Only thing that I have not got yet is the thermostat gasket. I ended up just ordering the gasket and not the whole thermostat, just because it was $7 for the gasket. The thermostat's still working. Yes, I could replace it while I'm there, but budget build, baby. Let's not fix what's not broken. So let's get this tensioner pulley knocked out. It's that lower pulley down there. And then I'll have to get the car jacked up and swap that oil pressure switch from underneath the car, and that one is gonna suck. We got good news and we got bad news. Good news is it was 110% the oil pressure switch that was leaking. There's a little rubber boot that covers the connector just so it doesn't get corroded or anything. That boot was filled with oil and there was oil all over the oil pressure switch. So that's definitely what was leaking. Here is the new oil pressure switch and there's the old one. For some reason on the old one, I don't know if they do this from factory, but they put silicone on the threads, which is weird. I usually just put pipe sealant or Teflon tape on the threads when I replace oil pressure switches, and I've never had an issue. I don't know why there's silicone on there, but I'm not gonna put silicone on mine. Bad news is, I've been driving this car for a couple days, and a little bit earlier in this video, I showed you guys that CV boot, or actually I don't know if I showed you it, but I definitely mentioned it, that the CV boot was swollen from all the oil being on it and that it was starting to lift off of the axle. I had to drive the car for the past couple days. I should have put like a big hose clamp or something like that on the axle, because now there's axle grease absolutely everywhere. Which is no fun. Because if we hop under here, you guys can even just see right there. There's grease everywhere. One thing I will say about this car so far that I'm noticing, and if you guys have one of these, I'm sure you're noticing it too, It's not that fun to work on. Like, everything is so tight in this engine bay and you can't get your hands in anywhere. I can't imagine how tight this is gonna be once we put a Sidewinder manifold in here with the big turbo, all the intercooler piping. Oh man, that's gonna suck. But I'm excited because that will actually be fun. It's not just maintenance stuff. We're actually gonna make it go fast. But to make it go fast, we gotta take care of all this maintenance stuff so we can make sure she's nice and reliable when she needs to handle the sauce from that big old turbo we got. I'm gonna try and hose clamp that axle or something like that for now till I can get a CV boot kit ordered for this thing. And I'm not excited to do that because the axle on the right side of this car is the one that really sucks to pull out because it's got the steady bearing in the middle. But it is what it is and it has to be done. So let's get this oil pressure switch slapped in and then get this thing fired up, make sure that oil pressure switch isn't leaking anymore, and make sure our tensioner pulley is good to go. Alright, we just fired her up. No leaks from the oil pressure switch, and no more noise from the damn tensioner pulley. She runs nice and quiet now, which is perfect. Now the only thing we are waiting on is the thermostat gasket, and now I need to order a CV boot rebuild kit for the right front inner CV joint on the axle, which sucks titties. I'm just having the worst luck with axles lately. I don't know what it is. All my CV boots are ripping. I've been dealing with grease absolutely everywhere. My freaking hoodie is just so dirty. Who decided it was a good idea to wear a gray hoodie in the shop? That was stupid. I got grease on my face. Okay, let's just work on this thing tomorrow because I don't have parts. This is annoying. I think we finally got all of the parts that we need, and I'll show you. I'm wearing some garbage clothes right now because this is gonna be a messy job. We got us a new CV boot from the dealership. The CV boot kit was $198, which is absolutely insane because a full axle for the WRX wasn't even 198 bucks. They were like 120. And this aftermarket CV boot kit, which comes with both clamps, the CV boot, and the grease right out of the box, was 15 bucks. And this thermostat gasket, OEM from Honda, was 7 bucks. Plus, I got a jug of OEM Honda premixed coolant, and that was 19 bucks. The oil pressure switch was expensive though. That was like 60 bucks. And then each idler pulley was around 25 bucks. Seems cheap, but this stuff adds up. And this is just maintenance stuff. We haven't even slapped the turbo in yet. So now that we finally have parts, let's get this thing jacked up for the like 3rd or 4th day in a row. Let's get that thermostat housing gasket swapped out first. We might not get to the CV boot tonight, depending on how much time I have. Hopefully we can get them both done. Clapped. Let's go, baby. Okay. Don't fall, bearing. Don't fall. Oh shit. So I ended up draining the coolant, and then I was like, you know what? I want to pull the axle out. So I pulled the axle out, and that CV joint came apart really easy. These are pretty nice on Hondas. It's just a bunch of bearings on the CV shaft. You just grease them up, slap them on there, slide the CV shaft in to the end, put the boot on, she's good to go. These axles really suck to do, only because of that bolt right there is an absolute pain in the ass to get at in the car because it's sandwiched under the subframe. And if you guys couldn't see before, now you can see how much grease is everywhere. This was a dirty job, but we got it out. So let's get that CV boot off, get those bearings slid back onto all the little individual pieces of the CV joint, get the new boot on, and then get this axle back in. Then we can get started on the thermostat because we already got the coolant drained out of it. did it, boys. Axle's all back together. New CV boots on there. This one won't leak anymore. We got her all nice and packed with grease. If you're putting CV boots on, you do need this tool right here. It is for squeezing those clamps on the end, and they're on there nice and tight. So now that that's done, it is currently 11:41 p.m. and I gotta wake up at 4:45 for work tomorrow, and I need to drive this car to work. So let's time lapse through getting this axle back in. Let's see if we can get this all back together in an hour. That's a lot of work to do in an hour. Axle is done, baby. Let's go. Beautiful. Okay, it is 12:40 a.m. now. We're done the axle. Everything's good there. Those mounts really suck to put back in. Now we just gotta swap the thermostat gasket out, which should be a quick, easy fix. We got a new thermostat gasket right here, and I got a nice hose clamp that we're gonna put on the rad hose, just in case it was the rad hose clamp that was leaking too. And the coolant's already drained, so it's just right up in there. Let's get this swapped out. Hopefully no more coolant leaks. Thermostat housing is out. I got the new gasket set in there already, or O-ring, whatever you want to call it. So now I'm gonna get the surface cleaned up on the block a little bit, get this thing slapped back on there, and then I'm not gonna torque the bolts on them. I'm just gonna hand torque it with a 1/4 inch ratchet, just because the torque on it is probably like maybe 8 to 13 foot-pounds, if that even. Probably around 8 to 10. So let's get this slapped back in there so I can drive this freaking car to work tomorrow, because I made the stupid decision to tear this thing apart and I ended up replacing the axle and the thermostat all in one night, and I didn't start till like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or something like that, which was dumb. Let's get this finished. What the fuck? Well, that didn't work. I have no idea what happened there, but that thermostat is pissing for some reason. All the bolts are tight. I wonder if the gasket just got pinched or something. Well, looks like I gotta pull that off again. Attempt number 2. It's actually bubbling this time. That's good. She's back up and running, boys. I don't know what happened, but this is my new thermostat gasket, and you can see it's torn right there, and that's where it was puking coolant out of. I tightened all the bolts evenly when I put thermostat housing on, so I don't even know how that happened. It must have popped out as I set it against the thermostat housing. I don't know. I put the old one back on, and she's not leaking. I think the main leak was that hose clamp on the rat hose. Because looking underneath now, she's running, and there is zero coolant coming from the thermostat housing, and I put the old gasket back on. So I guess we'll drive it and then see if it leaks. Well, boys, all the maintenance that we needed to take care of on the Civic is officially done, as long as that thermostat gasket doesn't leak. It is now probably closer to 3 in the morning. I might get an hour of sleep. 2:46, not bad. I thought I was gonna be done way earlier than that. Then thermostat gasket started pissing everywhere because I pinched it, and then I had a whole mess to clean up. And yeah, that wasn't really that fun. Usually I have fun working on cars, but I try to keep these videos as real as possible for you guys so that you guys can relate, because when shit goes wrong, it sucks. So I'm gonna drive the car over the next couple days, and then I'll probably update you guys in the next video, which will be on the WRX, if that thermostat gasket is leaking or not. Everything else should be solid. So I'm happy. She's ready to handle the sauce now. And we finally fixed everything. So that's gonna be it for this video. Peace out, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys don't struggle with whatever you're fixing as hard as I did with this. Goodbye.